This is Indigenous Insights Special Topics, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. This is the first episode of this series that covers this epidemic that's affected and affecting thousands upon thousands of people and families. Each episode will cover a different story, and these stories will be about real people in the U.S. and Canada. These stories may be disturbing and upsetting, but we tell these stories to bring awareness to this issue. Joining me via Facebook chat, we have Ariel Falls, my sister, and she's going to be doing the heavy lifting when it comes to the content of these stories. Ariel, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, so I can't really take credit for this idea. You actually came forward to me with this, and I was on board right away because A, I know this issue needs to be brought to the public attention more, and B, because I could tell right away you are passionate about it. Tell us why you want to tell these stories.
Yeah, I am very passionate about this issue in particular, since for the last about almost 4 years, I've been working in victim services in different roles, and I've been able to advocate and spread awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women, domestic violence, and other forms of violence that Indigenous people are affected by. And over the years, I've just carried that on into my personal life by reading case law, trying to understand laws related to Indigenous victims and methods of awareness for Indigenous issues. While I'm not an expert on any of these topics, I feel like I have enough knowledge and now a platform with you to help spread awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women. So, in my opinion, Indigenous women are being murdered and nobody is trying to find their murderer. Indigenous women are going missing and nobody's looking for them. So by personalizing and putting a name to or a face to the name of the victims instead of just referring to it as a missing and murdered Indigenous woman, I feel it might catch more people's attention and raise a lot more awareness. So the more awareness that we spread, the more likely that society or a whole country as a whole can address the underlying issues that are there. So we're sharing somebody's story who can't share it themselves, and we're giving a voice to the voiceless.
All right, very good. And what we're going to do is do a different story each episode, right?
Correct.
And how many episodes do you think this series is going to have? Because I'm going to kind of follow your lead on it.
I really don't know. There's thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women cases, and more continue to happen. I see that there's an Indigenous woman missing almost every single day. And that's on the news, so there's probably a lot more because there's not as much news coverage on Indigenous people. But I see it going until I can't do it anymore.
And so something else that we sort of talked about off the air was some of the statistics that are out there, because there's a lot of statistics and they're bad, but you're saying that those stats are not even accurate, or they might not be accurate.
Right. There's a long history of Indigenous people underreporting, and there's no way to know for sure how much it is off, but likely the numbers are a lot higher than what's portrayed by the government. Also, the government doesn't have a specific database that tracks missing or murdered Indigenous women, like they do or missing and murdered Indigenous women from reservations, or that they do with people who don't live on reservations.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to get into the first story that we're going to cover on today's episode. The crime involves the 1989 murder of a 24-year-old woman from British Columbia. This is Indigenous Insights Special Topics, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. And we're back. This is Indigenous Insights. My name is Mitch, and we have Ariel with us. This is our first Indigenous Insights Special Topics episode. Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women is the subject. Each episode will feature a different story with real people and real crimes. We tell these stories to bring the awareness to the fact that this is happening. And as Ariel said before, we're giving a voice to the voiceless. So Ariel, take it away.
This week, our story is of Alberta Williams, who was murdered in 1989 at the age of 24 in Prince Rupert, British Columbia. Her case still remains unsolved. Alberta was a First Nations woman who dreamed of becoming a nurse. Her family says she was always easy to get along with and always really nice to everybody. Alberta and her sister, Claudia, lived together in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is a really big city in British Columbia, where there's many different First Nations. And I wasn't able to find which First Nation she actually was, but there's like 10 of them just in Vancouver. So, but in the summer of 1989, Alberta and Claudia moved to Prince Rupert, which was just over 900 miles away from Vancouver, to work in a fish cannery for the summer. So when the end of summer came, and August 25th was supposed to be their last night in Prince Rupert before moving back to Vancouver. So Alberta went to a hotel bar in Prince Rupert called Popeye's Bar with her friends and family to celebrate. Towards the end of the night, she told Claudia that she was going to go to a house party and left. So before Claudia could turn around and say anything to Alberta, she was gone. So that was the last time Claudia would ever see her sister. A month later, on September 25th, 1989, human remains were found just over 20 miles outside of Prince Rupert, next to the Skeena River. It was confirmed to be Alberta. Investigators discovered evidence that Alberta was sexually assaulted before she was murdered. The highway Alberta was found near is Highway 16, which has been named the Highway of Tears.
This is Indigenous Insights, special topics, missing and murdered Indigenous women. Today's story features Alberta Williams. She was murdered at the age of 24 in British Columbia. Her remains were found near the Highway of Tears.
Yeah, and the Highway of Tears is something that I really want to address in a later episode. Today, I just want to focus on Alberta's case. In 2015, a Canadian Broadcasting Channel reporter named Connie Walker received an anonymous email, and that email said, "I know who killed Alberta Williams." So the reporter responded to the email, and she found out that the man was Gary Kerr, who sent the email, and he was the lead investigator in Alberta's case from the beginning. Now retired, he still has his notes from 1989 and the years following it related to Alberta's case. Together, Connie and Gary traveled to Prince Rupert to question the people that were in Gary's notes. Gary shared his first lead with Connie that the party Alberta went to that night was at her uncle Jack Little's house.
So wait a minute, if this guy has all these notes and he was the lead investigator, why didn't he keep after it at the time?
I have no idea. Part of me wants to think that he feels guilty about something all these years later, or maybe he really did try, and it just eats at him that he wasn't able to, get some justice for Alberta.
So it's both ends of the spectrum a little bit. You think that he might not have put his all into it at the time?
Right. So maybe he's just trying to fix what he didn't do back then.
Okay.
So when Gary questioned Jack in his initial investigation, he said that Jack seemed a little nervous and scared. Jack told Gary that he saw Alberta getting into a truck with a white guy with long blonde hair. He also told Gary that he received a call from a psychic shortly after Alberta disappeared and told him they felt like there had been a tragic accident.
A psychic?
Yeah.
He got a call randomly from a psychic?
Right.
That's a little fishy, Uncle Jack.
And I think that's something, I don't know, like I feel like if you're going to make something up, that's a really weird thing to make up.
That's true. I mean, it's hard to believe that one.
Yeah, for sure. But ultimately, Jack decided to stop cooperating with investigators, and they weren't able to identify the pickup truck or the white man with long blonde hair.
So he stopped cooperating.
Yeah, and he just wouldn't talk to the police anymore, and I don't know why, because you'd think that if a police officer came to you and your niece was missing, you would do everything you could to try and help them.
Well, it could go either way. I mean, if they don't know what's going on and they're questioning this guy a lot, he could just get nervous. I mean, they're looking to pin it on somebody. Yeah,
that could be it too. And also there's a lot of distrust with law enforcement, and that's, I mean, like I said earlier, it's related to the statistics that we have now, but it's also related to the reasoning behind why people don't want to talk to the police.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can see that there could be some fear there. I mean, that's a serious thing there. They got remains and whatnot. So I don't know. I think you could go either way with that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But Gary, still today, he believes that Jack Little murdered Alberta, but Jack's never been charged for anything.
All right, so you said him and this reporter went back and started questioning more people.
Yeah, although there's, there's reasons that he believes that Jack is the one that did it. Jack also moved away from Prince Rupert. He about 550 miles away, and he's never moved back, although Prince Rupert was his hometown.
Okay, so he moved. So he got the call from the psychic. He stopped cooperating, and then he moved away.
Right. And he refused to take a polygraph test.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that is pretty suspicious. Same time, though, like it could go either way. I mean, if they're looking to, I hate to use the word pin this on somebody, but if they're really looking for a suspect, it'd be scary to be in that spot. Even if he was innocent, he knows he's innocent. It'd be scary to be under that pressure.
Yeah, I mean, people fail polygraphs if they're nervous and they're telling the truth. So, I mean, I can see why he wouldn't want to take one, because I would probably think the same thing. But still, the other things that make Gary think that Jack did it are still pretty suspicious.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's hear some of that stuff. Right now, it's hard to tell with those angles there. What's some of the other stuff he has against him?
Right. Well, Gary believes that Jack is the last person to be seen with Alberta, and Jack told police that he couldn't remember any details from the night that Alberta went missing.
So why does he believe that he's the last person to see her alive?
Well, they were able to find other people that saw Alberta that night, but either at the bar or after she left the bar.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And then Jack said that the guy with the long blonde hair saw him, or he was with that guy.
Yeah, so Jack is trying to say that Alberta was with somebody else when there's other people saying that Alberta was with Jack at the end of the night.
Yeah, and nobody else has said anything about the other guy.
There's quite a few people, actually.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, who was the last person to see her alive then?
I think as we continue with this, I think you'll be able to come to a consensus on it and maybe start to agree, or maybe start to disagree with Gary, but I'll let you make your own conclusion on that.
Okay, all right, so let's get everything on the table here. So right now, Gary and this reporter are looking into things a little bit more. Years later, after the original case, Gary believes that Jack was the last person to see her alive. Jack said that she left with this guy with long blonde hair. That's where we're at, right?
Yep.
Okay, so keep giving us the facts here so we can keep building this story.
Well, there was other people that said that Jack's nephew, Brad, was also at Jack's house the night Alberta went missing, where it said that Alberta went to the party at Jack's house. And Brad said that he heard voices that night, but he didn't get up to see what was going on. When the police asked him about things, he told him he didn't believe that Jack had anything to do with Alberta's murder or disappearance at that time, but he didn't remember any details about that night either. Today, Brad works as of in 2015, when the investigator and the journalist went to talk to Brad, he told them that he's an educator on residential schools in Canada, and he explained to them that Alberta's murder, as well as other Indigenous murders, are related to residential schools.
Which there is all kinds of studies and things that do indicate that a little bit. That could be an episode too.
Yeah, definitely. That can be probably multiple episodes if we really want to get deep into it. Other people that were at the house or at the bar included Brad's brother, Doug. He was also staying at Jack's house that night that Alberta went missing.
All right, so that's 3 people that are at this house now.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, and Jack said he doesn't remember anything from that night, but he didn't see her?
He said that he saw her leave with a white man with long blonde hair, and that he didn't have a party that night.
Okay, but he did have a party. The son heard the sounds of the party, right?
Well, Brad said that he heard voices that night, but he wasn't sure exactly what it was because he didn't get up to see it. He was in his bedroom.
Okay, but it is conflicting because Uncle Jack said he went home and went to bed.
Right.
So the voices is conflicting. Might not have been a party, but there was definitely multiple people in the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Brad's brother, Doug, was also staying at Jack's house that night, and Doug said that Jack did have a party that night.
Okay, so now the party is back in. So we do got somebody saying that there was a party there.
Yep, so we have one person saying he heard voices and another person saying that there was a party that night.
Okay, so Uncle Jack, what he's saying then, that seems to be furthest from the truth.
Right. Doug also said that he saw Alberta at Jack's house that night.
Okay, so that puts her there. Jack says she was there. Jack said she left with this. What about the guy with the blonde hair? Did anybody say anything about seeing him?
Not Doug. Doug did say that he saw other people there that night, like including Carol Russell, who's Alberta's cousin. But he wasn't able to share any of this information with the police, so I'm not sure anything was looked into further or whether or not the police were it was confirmed that Jack had that party.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't they take this guy's statement in 1989 when this happened?
No. The police never contacted him, and he never went to the police about it.
So, wait, the police knew about this party, though, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they get a list of people that are there, and they questioned them people that are there?
Nope, because Doug was there, and he admitted that he was there, but he wasn't questioned.
And so what's going on with that? I mean, that seems like terrible police work.
Yeah, and there's other people, too, that came forward saying that the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is like Canada's FBI, didn't contact them about what they saw, although they saw Alberta with Jack the night she disappeared, and some of them even reported it to the police, and they felt like they weren't taken seriously.
Okay, so then this goes along with, what was the lead investigator's name?
Gary.
Yeah, Gary. So then Gary, it doesn't sound like Gary did a very good job, and a little bit later in life now he is kind of regretting that he did that.
Right, that could be it.
So what other kinds of things did they miss? What standard police work did they not do? I mean, it sounds like they didn't interview a bunch of people that would have gave them a lot of information.
Right, and I think maybe they had their tunnel vision, and maybe they knew of Jack Little from other things, or maybe they just, this guy seems like good, I have a gut feeling it was him, so they just had tunnel vision and didn't even think about questioning other people. Which
is the reason that it would, make us, favor Jack Little's story a little bit of moving away, because if the cops get tunnel vision on you, that's a lot of pressure, even if he didn't do it. But, with 3 people placing her at the party, I don't know, it's a big story here.
Yeah, so when you think of some of the parts, you can kind of understand why Jack would have done what he did, but with what other people are saying, it makes it sound suspicious.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering if there's multiple people at this party. Did anybody else see her leave the party?
I don't think anybody stated that they saw her leave. They've only stated that they know that she was there. There was more people that saw Alberta and Jack and another man in a black pickup truck, and that's 2 people.
Well, wait, when was that?
It was the day after she was thought to have disappeared from Prince Rupert.
Oh, okay. So she was placed at the party, and then she was seen the next day?
Right.
And she was seen with who?
She was seen with Jack and another man who was a white man with long blonde hair.
Whoa. Okay. So Jack said she had left the party with a man with long blonde hair.
Right.
Jack said he didn't know who this was?
Right. He said that he just saw a white man with long blonde hair, and Alberta left with him.
Okay, and then the day after, somebody said they seen Jack, a man with long blonde hair, and Alberta together?
Yeah, and this was 90 miles away from Prince Rupert in Terrace, British Columbia.
Okay, so who saw him? Who brought that forward?
The people who saw Alberta it was actually Alberta's cousin Yvonne and Yvonne's sister Amanda. So they knew who Alberta was because it was her cousin.
Family members.
It's a mistaken identity.
And what kind, did they just see her? Or did they talk to her? What was it? Just a sighting?
Well, no, Alberta, Jack, and the long blonde-haired man came to Amanda's house where Yvonne and Amanda were, and Alberta asked Amanda if she could borrow money because she needed gas money to get back to Prince Rupert.
Okay.
And Yvonne said that she looked at the man in the truck, the one with long blonde hair, and said that it was Kathy's boyfriend. And Kathy is one of Alberta's sisters. Kathy's
boyfriend is the guy with the long blonde hair?
Yeah.
Okay. So they know who the long blonde hair guy is, and the 3 of them are 90 miles away from where their house party's at.
Right.
All right, well, I mean, that seems pretty suspicious. The lead investigator wasn't able to... Did the lead investigator ever find out who this long blonde hair guy was? Did they ever question that guy? I mean, he's his sister's boyfriend.
They did question him, but they didn't have any evidence or anything against him. And at the time of the initial investigation, they didn't know that Alberta was seen in Terrace the next day.
Which they would have, though, if they would have interviewed her family members there.
Right. So all these years, the police have thought that she went missing that Friday night after she left the bar, but really she was seen on Saturday. So their initial facts are wrong.
Yeah, so she went missing the day after.
Yeah.
Okay, so where does it go from there then?
Well, Yvonne said that Kathy had access to a black pickup truck that summer, which is relevant to what other people have said because Jack said she saw Alberta with a long, blonde-haired white man in a truck leaving the bar.
Oh, yeah, the truck. Black pickup truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Yvonne also said that the man told Amanda he was in a hurry to get back to Prince Rupert because his taxi shift started soon. So he had to go to work.
The blonde hair guy, he was a taxi driver?
Yep, the blonde hair guy was a taxi driver.
Okay, I'm going to call him blonde hair guy just because that's just how I know him. Do we know that guy's name?
Yeah.
Can we say his name or no?
We can say his name because he's not been named as a person of interest. It's just kind of...
He might be.
Well, maybe.
Oh, what is it? Let's say his name. Well, no, we better not. We better not, just in case. We'll just call him the blonde hair guy. I mean, because we don't know. And we say this guy's name and it gets out there and, we won't say his name or should we?
I think we should.
You think we should? I mean, this is our first episode here. This is a moment here. We can say his name. We're just saying the facts. We're trying to bring awareness to kind of what's going on. So blonde hair guy, so I don't have to call him blonde hair guy. What's his name?
His name is Ken Collinson. And in the summer of 1989, he was dating Alberta's sister and Alberta's sister Kathy, who stated that she owned that black pickup truck that summer.
Okay, and so we believe that Ken, Jack, and Alberta took off in that truck towards Prince Rupert again because Ken had to work his taxi shift.
Right.
Okay.
And when Amanda had to help Alberta back into the truck because she was intoxicated.
This was that was the day after the party.
Right.
So she had a late night that night. Okay.
Yeah, and so Amanda got a good look at both Ken Collinson and Jack, and so it's not like a mistaken identity, saw them driving past, like she was able to see them up close and personal.
Was there any comment on their condition at that time? Were they all drunk and stuff too, or?
There wasn't any comment on that.
Okay, just that Alberta was intoxicated.
Right. So, like we said, Ken worked as a taxi driver, and he is the white man who had long blonde hair at the time. Ken also said that he wasn't with Alberta and Jack that night in Terrace, that he was at work, and he hasn't spoken or seen Jack since the night Alberta disappeared.
But of course, we know it wasn't the night she disappeared. It was the next day.
Yeah.
So he lied because he did see her after that night then, right?
Yeah, if you believe Amanda and Yvonne and Amanda's husband, who all saw them, then yeah, he did see Jack and Alberta the next day. But he's claiming that he wasn't actually there. So yeah, he's lying.
Okay. All right. Take us deeper down the hole. Where does it go from here?
Well, the police have questioned Ken throughout the years, and he was asked to provide his DNA, I think within the last maybe 10 or 15 years, but he refused to give a DNA sample despite saying that he had nothing to hide.
Wait, DNA. Who was going for DNA? The lead investigator?
No, the investigators that have been in charge of the case in the last 10 years.
So these guys are still actively working on the case?
A little bit, yeah.
So, and then the efforts of this other lead investigator, these are kind of two separate entities looking at it?
Yeah, because the former lead investigator is working with the journalist now rather than working with the police.
Yeah.
He's just trying to uncover more information that he wasn't able to find out back then.
All right, so then what spurred the police then to start asking for DNA?
That is not public information, so nobody really knows if they have like a DNA sample from Alberta's body or if they were just getting his DNA for another reason, or nobody knows because in Canada it's a lot more private with things like that, and they keep stuff a lot more private when it comes to cases that aren't being tried or have been tried.
So in 1989, what kind of DNA technology was there? Were they collecting anything for DNA samples at that point? Or, what could possibly be the scenario there?
Well, I don't think that they specifically collected anything that then said, well, maybe we can get DNA from this, because back then they didn't use DNA. I don't think it was until the 90s that they started using DNA. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. But they would have collected blood to use blood types. So if they kept that blood throughout the years, like they should have, then they might be able to extract a DNA profile from it.
Okay. All right. But he refused.
Right.
So, can't they go now and talk to these family members that say they've seen this girl after the night she's supposed to disappear and she was with this guy? And then wouldn't that be enough to be able to order this guy to give some blood?
Well, they definitely can go talk to them now, but I don't know if that would be enough for them to get a court order for Ken's DNA. And they have not done that yet.
So, so they can't get his DNA because he refuses. They don't have the evidence to go after him. So is it just kind of a standstill then, or what?
For investigators, it was at the time. But when the journalist went to go talk to Ken, he was smoking a cigarette. And when he finished it, he threw that cigarette butt on the ground. And the journalist, Connie, took that cigarette butt and sent it off for DNA analysis herself.
Ooh, she swiped it.
Yeah.
I like it.
She was able to get a DNA profile back from that cigarette butt, and she contacted the RCMP that is responsible for Alberta's case, but they weren't able to confirm or deny that they had a DNA profile of a suspect from Alberta's case.
So just from the profile that she got, you couldn't really tell anything about whose it was. You had to try to compare it to somebody else's or another sample to compare.
Right. They would have to compare the one that she got from the cigarette butt with the one that they got from whatever evidence they might have.
Oh, but wait. So why didn't they cooperate?
Well, I mean, that's like kind of like a sticky situation because there's really no proof that that is Ken's DNA. And there's really there's no evidence, and it's not like it wasn't collected by police.
Oh, so just in the way that she got it, since she just kind of picked up a random cigarette butt and brought it in, and even if they knew for a fact that that was his DNA on there, just from the way it was collected, it wouldn't stand up in court.
Right, it would definitely be challenged.
And that's one of the the pros and cons of the court system.
Yep.
Take us deeper.
Well, there's a few more people that came forward after Connie did her questioning for people in 2015 and 2016. One of those people was Carol Russell, Alberta's cousin, who Doug stated was at Jack Little's house the night after the bar with Alberta and other people for a party.
Carol was there?
That's what Doug said.
Okay, Doug said Carol was there.
Right, but Carol said that she wasn't at Jack's house that night, but that she heard Ken Collinson was at the party and that Ken told her that he drove Jack and Alberta somewhere, but he wasn't sure when.
Huh.
And then she told Connie that she was worried about getting in trouble with the police if she said anything more about the case.
Why did she think she was going to get in trouble?
I don't know. She said that she would contact the police and see if it was okay for her to talk about it, and then call Connie back, but she never called her back. Maybe it goes back to that not trusting the police.
Yeah.
So another person that they talked to was Vera Derrick, who was Alberta's aunt. And she said she received a phone call days after Alberta vanished, and a woman on the other end told her that Alberta's body was dumped.
Wait, say that again? Say that again?
Vera Derrick, Alberta's aunt, said she received a phone call just days after Alberta disappeared, and a woman on the other end told her that Alberta's body was dumped.
Days after she disappeared, a woman called and said the body was dumped.
Yep.
The remains were found, what was it? What do you say, 20 days after she disappeared?
Yeah.
And how many days after was the call? Somewhere in between 1 and 20 days.
Yeah, somewhere in between that.
Okay. And we don't know who this woman is.
No, and she doesn't know who it was, but she thinks it might have been a friend of Alberta's. And the woman agreed to meet her somewhere, but she never showed up.
She agreed to meet her somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's, wow.
Yeah. And Vera reported this call to the police and what was said, but she said the police didn't take her seriously.
Oh, man. So where does it go from there? I mean, that's all I can keep asking. I mean, it's like facts on top of facts with this. You can see how this really gets into complication mode really quick.
Yeah, especially with conflicting stories, who's telling the truth. But there's 3 more people that talked to Connie about that night, and one of them was Alberta's friend Teresa, who told Connie that she saw Alberta get into a white work van with 2 men.
A white work van now?
Yeah.
So we had a black pickup truck with 2 men. Now we have a report of a white pickup truck or a white van with 2 men?
Yep.
Okay.
And then 2 other people came forward after Connie started her investigation and said that they saw Alberta get into a black pickup truck with 3 men that night.
With 3 men.
Right.
Yeah, wow. Lots of conflicting statements here and whatnot. It's hard to pick through. I mean, it does seem like the black pickup truck is kind of the one that they're saying here, and 2 or 3 men.
Yeah.
It was definitely more than one guy.
The only person that said it was one man was Jack.
Yep. He's the only guy. And the rest of them said that Jack was there too.
Yes.
So so what about the third man? Jack, Ken, then who's this third guy now?
Well, that wasn't investigated back then, and I don't know, there's nothing published that says it's investigated now, but based on what other people have said, I think that maybe they just mistaked 2 men for 3 men.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, that's right, because this is years later, right, when they're talking to the reporter.
Right.
So some of these facts could be, well, see, that's why those cops should have did the proper investigating right off the bat when the memories were fresh.
Right, because then maybe everybody's facts that they're putting forward that they think are fact would line up more. I mean, I can't even remember things that happened a year ago, but people are trying to remember things that happened in 1989.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing, and you know, anything that they bring forward is pretty much unusable when it comes to the case, right?
When they bring it forward to the reporter, can be unusable unless they go question the police go question that person themselves.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, what the reporter did is basically what we're doing. We're just bringing awareness to it. Like, if the cops happen to hear this and they go and question her, that's all, you know, we can't do it. There's nothing we can do. So even though, like, that reporter seemed to be uncovering all this new evidence, it wasn't officially evidence.
Right. So that's pretty much all of the facts of the case. And as of today, Alberta's murder is still considered unsolved, and there's been no persons of interest officially named by the court.
That's all there is. The cops haven't done any more than that?
The cops have been a little bit more cooperative with Alberta's family. Alberta's sister, Claudia, who was with her that night that she disappeared, said that over the years it's been really hard to even get a return phone call from the RCMP. But after Connie did her investigation with Gary, the RCMP has told her that Alberta's case is now a top priority. So that's a good thing, because
kind of. I mean, that one seems more political than anything.
It could be, but I mean, maybe not.
The only guy I believe is having a change of heart is that lead investigator. I mean, he's not even collecting real evidence with that reporter. He's getting the story out there. But you know, those cops making a top priority. Do you think they're actually gonna? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, it could go either way. I guess we'll see if anything happens. Nothing officially has happened, like in the court system, or the police have not announced anything. But I mean, maybe in the coming years, maybe months, something will happen, and then we'll know that the RCMP was serious.
Okay, so I guess that's just how these stories are going to pretty much go. I mean, I wonder if we're actually ever going to get any updates on some of these stories. But pretty much every one of these episodes, we're going to have an open topic that we'll look forward to in the future.
Yeah, and I can definitely I will keep up to date on them. But there is a little bit of a silver lining there, because raising that awareness gives people like Claudia the platform to advocate for the government to probe into missing and murdered Indigenous women cases, as she's testified in hearings related to this. So she's testified on what happened with her and her family, in hopes that it convinces the government to do something about it.
We did our little bit here today to get her story out. We got the facts out there, and that's about all we can do, right?
Yeah, we can't investigate it ourselves. I'm not an investigator, and I'm not an expert, so I just hope that people who are investigators and are experts do look into it, especially for her family, because Alberta's brother Francis, he thinks that Jack had something to do with Alberta's murder.
Wait, say that again?
Alberta's brother Francis, he thinks that Jack had something to do with Alberta's murder.
Okay, so the family does think that Jack had something to do with it.
Well, Francis, I think, has been the only one to come forward to say that he believes Jack had something to do with it. I think Claudia agreed that Jack was suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these facts, but I guess we never really confirmed it that the family thought that Jack did something, even though that they were saying he's one of the last ones to be with her alive. Jack pointed at the guy with the long blonde hair. I didn't know if the family maybe thought that he did it, or what. But so the family is suspicious of Uncle Jack, who moved away.
Right.
And what about the boyfriend? I mean, do they think that the boyfriend had something to do with it?
I don't think they've really stated anything publicly. I think, after all these years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's not like a Twitter feed where I can keep up with what they're saying on this, huh?
Right. And then after all of these years, you can think somebody did it, you can think another person did it, but really the only thing that's really going to help them is somebody finding out what actually happened.
Yeah, and that's just going to take the person coming forward and saying, hey, I did it and this is what happened.
Yep. And the family's still doing, trying to raise more awareness. Francis placed a cross where Alberta's body was found, and just raising that little bit of awareness that people see that when they're driving by. And her sister told Connie that reliving the memories of what happened that night and what happened afterwards is worth it, even though it's hard, because she feels it'll help the case get solved soon.
So Alberta Williams, 1989. So thank you very much, Ariel, for doing the research on this and bringing this subject to us. This is our first Indigenous Insight Special Topics, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. You said that was a subject of a podcast also, right?
Yeah, it's Connie Walker turned all of this information into a podcast that is very easy to follow. The podcast is called Missing and Murdered: What Happened to Alberta Williams. The podcast is available on any podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, but also there is a slideshow on the CBC website, and I can post a link somewhere for your listeners to hear or go to, but it's a slideshow that kind of condenses it a little bit if you want to find out more information that way too.
Very good. So there's more information out there. And hey, another thing we should do here on these episodes is bring awareness to some of the events taking place. I think there was a Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women March in Minneapolis going on here soon. And didn't you say that you heard of something coming up?
Yeah, there is a vigil. I think February 14th is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Awareness Day in Canada and I believe in the U.S. They usually have marches and vigils just to raise awareness of the issue.
So is this kind of a typical case that we'll be covering here on these episodes?
I don't know if it's really typical because I was fortunate to find this information that Connie Walker was able to uncover, but other cases might be less in-depth just because there's not as much information out there. News stations don't report on it, and it's just, it's classified as the wrong thing, so I might not be able to find as much information, but I will do the best that I can. I chose this case as our first story because I think it's a great example of how sharing somebody's story to raise awareness can make changes, and that's what I really hope we do with some of our stories.
And that's what we'll hope to do with each of these episodes, whether they have more information, a podcast to go along with it, or if there's not very much information, we're just going to do the best that we can here. Ariel, thank you very much for putting this information together and bringing it to us here on Indigenous Insight Special Topics, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. Here's a question. Is there more cases in Canada or the U.S.?
Well, there is a lot more information about cases in Canada because they've been working on creating a database and making sure that these women that are missing and murdered, their names are out there. So a lot more information is available. In the U.S., it's harder to find information about cases, but I definitely want to kind of keep it kind of even, because both of them are equally as important.
All right, so until next time, thank you very much for tuning in. This is Mitch.
This is Ariel.
And we'll see you next time.